Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I am your host, Sam Vicini. We are presented by CLNS Media. Today on the show, it is our weekly appearance from Cole Zwicker. We're going to be talking about all of the NBA draft action that happened over the course of the last week. We had a massive amount of things happen. We had Feast Week. We had Battle for Atlantis, PK80, the random game at Barclays Center where Collin Sexton scored 40 points while playing 3-on-5. Like, there were just so many random things that happened this week that we feel like we're just going to do an NBA draft-centric version of the podcast today. So, Cole, how's it going, buddy? How's your Thanksgiving?
It was good, man. Just got together with family and ended up just slipping away and watching a massive amount of college basketball. It was good to have a lot of high-value games on, but I'm kind of looking forward to just more traditional, 4 or 5 games a week and not just ridiculous onslaught of 5-6 games a day.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. Like, Thanksgiving, I watched very little just because, oh boy, was Thanksgiving an eventful day on my end. But we hosted Thanksgiving, all that stuff. So I watched like 3 or 4 games, but, it was the Friday, it was the Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday and Wednesday beforehand, like just an overload of basketball.
Yeah, it absolutely was. I haven't watched the NBA in probably a week straight. No recorded games or anything, just been straight college, 5-6 games a day, trying to get as much in as possible now to build a better kind of foundation on analyzing these guys from the off.
Yeah, like tomorrow is going to be my big catch-up day on the NBA. Like, I finally have hit a point where I can kind of slow down and just be like, okay, I can watch like 8 games of the NBA today on tape and figure out what's going on with the Cavs defense and figure out, how the Sixers have gone on this run and everything like that. But, last week, it's just all college basketball. You have to get the evaluations done. And I didn't bring this up to you, but we should probably talk about USC, Texas A&M. Did you watch that game? Like, that was a random one that just popped up out of nowhere.
Yeah, I don't think I caught any of that one. I'm kind of in a blur now because I watched so many games. I might have watched a little bit of it.
But like, there were just so many random things that popped up over the course of the last few days. And we'll start with PK80 just because I think that was probably the event where people will kind of point to with Marvin Bagley to say like, hey, this guy is pretty clearly the best college basketball player right now. We'll see if he ends up being the number 1 overall pick, but like, it's hard for me to find another college basketball player that is just straight up as good as he is right now.
Yeah, he kind of won me over a little bit in the second half of that Florida game. I know he was great down the stretch in Texas. I thought he was got off to a rough start in the Texas game for the most part in the first half. I mean, he's still producing, of course, because that's what he does, but there was a lot of things I didn't like. But the second half against Florida, man, he was just busting ass and outworking guys. And that activity, motor, athleticism combination with the production, again, there's this one sequence where he blocked Gioza, I think, at the rim on an isolation. Then he sprints down the floor and has that open court kind of footwork stepping around bodies finish, and then just sprints back and transition to the other end. He was just flying everywhere. So you can do a lot when you have that combination of athleticism and activity. So that was the moment, those like 10 minutes or so where I was like, okay, this guy probably is the best player in college basketball right now. I still have my reservations, but you can't deny that he is a legitimate prospect just in the form that he is right now.
So yeah, he averaged like 27 points and 15 rebounds against Portland State, Texas, and Florida. I think that the centerpiece matchup was probably the Texas game. The first half of the Texas game was a little bit funky for him. I thought like it didn't seem like Duke was in any sort of rhythm. And, he ends up with 34 points and 15 rebounds. But a lot of that was over the course of like the last 20 minutes of the game where he again just kind of went into that fully engaged mode where he's just so athletic and his motor is so high and his it's not even just the athleticism. It's like the little parts of his athleticism where his body control is just better than anyone his size that I've ever seen. And his second jump ability is better than anyone his size that I've ever seen. Like, it's not just the leaping and the quickness and everything like that. It's the entire package of skills that he brings to the table athletically is just unlike anything that I can remember.
It really is. I mean, the second jump, of course, we knew about that. It's just seeing it on the floor, it just takes a while to get accustomed to. You watch the other big man prospects, and a lot of these guys are super coordinated. They're really fluid. But Bagley just adds that I don't really know how to explain it. It's just like that, the motor element as well. He just looks different. He looks like he's trying so much harder. He's flying around. He's making plays. And you see he's not refined yet as far as his skill game goes. There's still some upside there that he's flashed a lot. I mean, we had the shooting flashes, the three-point range, the pull-up against Texas, the spot up from three against Florida. You know, his best, I think, input to his shooting upside has been his touch with his left hand. I think he's got pretty natural touch around the rim.
Yep.
He got in a little bit of a rhythm shooting free throws just because he took a ton of them. So he looked more comfortable there. It's reasonable to project a lot of areas of his game to improve skill-wise, like the flashes with passing on the move, that drop-off to Carter on the second half yesterday, and confined space. That was a really small area to fit that pass in. He's done a little bit of that, kicking to the corner, reading the dig man. So a lot of his game right now is just not refined skill-wise. He's surviving based on athleticism. You'll see it arise in the open court in transition and big spaces. But if that skill catches up with his motor and his athleticism, like he's going to be a top-level prospect in the last probably decade or so. Like, there is so much there athletically.
Like, that's the scary part for me. Like, we knew that the athleticism and the motor was there. It's the skill stuff, the flashes of skill that you see that just randomly, like, pop up randomly, like in the middle of these games where he'll take like 2 dribbles and pull up from 3 and be like, yeah, I can do that. He'll do these crazy ass like passes on the move. He started to improve with some short roll stuff and these little dishes on short rolls to Carter, as you mentioned. You know, the ability to really sit down defensively and guard guys on the perimeter. Like, he was tasked against Florida with guarding Igor Kulichov, like the whole game, who's this 6'5" wing guy. And he was fine at it. Like, he totally took over that game in the last 15 minutes defensively, I thought. It's the little stuff. Like, it's just the little refinements that he keeps adding to his game at 18 years old that is just insane to me. Like, I don't understand how someone can do all of this, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's the age, it's the development stage, and it's going to be really important to track how much he improves over the course of this year. I feel like that with all this big class. It's like everybody has pretty defined weaknesses right now. It's just how they work towards addressing those. We've seen Bagley take small steps already. I'm not totally sold on the skill game as far as face-up situations. He doesn't look super in control of the ball all the time. Like, he gets sped up a little bit, Sure. He'll run into guys. So there's still areas to improve. Defensively, I still don't know what to do with him, really. I think a lot of it is just technique, like poor positioning on pick and rolls. He opens up too quickly, allowing penetration.
Yeah.
So there's
I'm
still
not
issues.
worried about defense, like on the perimeter with him. Like, I am worried about what you do with him in terms of protecting the rim. He's not a primary rim protector, like yet,
Yes.
basically at all. And I think that is going to be. I'm not going to say you can't play him at the 5 if he's not a primary rim protector, but it kind of puts you into a box into what kind of 4-man you have to play next to him. You really have to have a strong weak side rim protector as a 4 next to him in that case. And that can get a little bit touchy because it's tough to find those guys, especially in the modern NBA now, where teams want to go as small as they can while still maintaining size. It's hard to find shot blocking guys who can also knock down shots from the perimeter, for instance. That's why Serge Ibaka was so valuable for all those years, and why, I mean, essentially Oklahoma City picked Serge Ibaka over James Harden. They thought at the time, and this was probably a really, really dumb thing to think, but like, they thought at the time it was going to be harder to find a Serge Ibaka than it was to find a James Harden. That got proven wrong, but I think that the concept behind it wasn't false. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. And I think that's kind of the knock on Bagley, right? Overall, he's an offensive 5 and a defensive 4, so it requires a very special tailoring to him. I think you probably are a little higher on his skill game, maybe developing in the future to an NBA 4. I'm a little bit more reserved there. But I was thinking last night of who I would compare him to stylistically, and Amari Stoudemire kept popping in my head.
Yeah,
as far as I know there's differences as far as Amari's a little bit more of a power guy, even though Bagley can get physical. I like that element of his game. But then you look at who was next to Amari, and that was Sean Marion. Perfect complement, right? Guy who can protect the rim from the weak side, can really play defense. If you could fit him in kind of a spread system like that, where you could build around his finishing capability in the pick and roll, he's more agile. I think he's going to be fine as a ball handler against 5s. He's going to have the agility advantage. You can really carve out like an awesome competitive advantage with him.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. Like, I think that Bagley is so good that you want to fit around him. Like, there are guys where part of their appeal of being a prospect, and I think that this is kind of where we might be able to shift to Mohamed Bamba after I say this. Like, part of the appeal with them is that they have just such an easy, seamless fit in the modern NBA, right? Bamba can be this floor, rim protecting, hopefully gravity inducing, screen setting diver 5 who you can really play any kind of 4 next to and be fine. Bagley, you're going to have to work at it, but it doesn't matter to me. Like, he's just going to be so productive for you. And the way that he fills in a lot of different little holes, both on offense and on defense for your team, and creates value in all these just little ways, it just doesn't matter to me anymore. Like, I think that for me, I think he's probably number 1 for me right now. And I keep going back and forth, and I think it's probably going to be a thing that, I keep changing my mind throughout the year. Is it going to be Doncic? Is it going to be Bagley? Is it going to be DeAndre Ayton? Like, this is going to be an evolving thing throughout the year for me, but it's hard for me to go against the production that Bagley has shown, as well as the growth process that his skill level has undertaken already throughout the college basketball season through 7 or 8 games.
And that's fair. I think that if he continues to progress skill-wise, and I see that from him manifest on the court, then I will be in the same court as you are as far as if he's going to be a dynamic talent, I will build around him. That's the kind of philosophy you have to have. You have to build around the best players no matter what, even if there's deficiencies, because no prospects is going to be perfect, right? So if he becomes that guy, then I will get to the spot you're at. I'm not quite there yet. I still have Luka number 1, but we'll see.
So let's go on ahead and move on to Mohamed Bamba. And every time I've seen him this year, I've been a little bit underwhelmed, and I think that that's always kind of been the issue with Bamba, and it's why I had him, some people had him at number 2, number 3. There were some people that had him at number 1. I think that Jonathan Wasserman over at Bleacher Report talked to a scout who said I would take Bamba over Bagley before their big matchup. Like, there are easy reasons to see why people would be enthused by Mohamed Bamba, but if you watch him, over the course of the long haul, it's really easy to come away unimpressed. And that's kind of where I'm at right now.
So what specific elements of his game are you unimpressed with?
I'm worried about the effort levels in a lot of ways. To be such a good defensive player, which is where I think everyone agrees so much of his value lies in the NBA game, you have to be an exceedingly high effort player. And with Bamba, it just isn't there yet. I'm not saying it's not going to get there. I'm not saying that Shaka Smart isn't going to bring this out of him by the time January rolls around even. But right now, he really struggles in space, I think because he just doesn't really care to get down in defensive stance half the time. His rim protection is good when he goes up for blocks, but he doesn't always choose to rotate, kind of. Like, it's just the weak side rotations aren't exactly there all the time. His offensive game is farther away than what I even thought it was. He's a really poor screen setter. He is just kind of struggling to find his place in college basketball and struggling to really, I don't even know if it's carrying or what, but like he's just not making the impact that these other elite level freshmen are making on either end of the floor. And I guess that's what worries me, that, is he going to be the guy that we always want more from, or is he going to be the kind of guy that can show us by the end of the year, hey, this is going to be the exact skill set I'm going to bring to an NBA team. It's really easy to fit me in. Like, it's worth drafting me at number 4, number 5.
Yeah, I mean, the defense, he definitely struggles in space a little bit with pick and roll D, especially aggressive coverage, as you saw it against Gonzaga. Can really get strung out, has poor feel for when to help and recover timing wise. His positioning on hedges is poor. Some of that's effort. He'll just reach in and swipe at guys sometimes when he should just move his feet and try to contest shots. Offensively, though, you hit on something that's really interesting that I was thinking about, is the screen setting ability. You want this guy to be conceptually a pick and roll kind of dive guy. He doesn't have that incredible bounce, but he has the length to compensate. But if he's not going to be a physical screen setter and he doesn't have the best frame for that, it's hard to see him being that dynamic in a modern offense. If you're not going to set good screens and you're not going to dive hard to the rim, he's not a good enough shooter yet to be just a space threat like a unicorn type. He might evolve into that. I think he's got some natural touch as well. He shows soft touch, but the results haven't been there either. So if he doesn't evolve into a shooter, I just don't know what value he's bringing to a modern offense. I know that's not what he's supposed to be, but you have to do something offensively if you're going to be a modern NBA big. You can't just be a complete, you can't be a complete liability. He doesn't have the strength. You have to carve out space. We'll see how much he can add to his frame over time. But yeah, he has to be a dynamic, rim protecting threat. And of course, we see the block shots. I don't think his instincts are top notch. I think Jaren Jackson has better instincts than he does, for instance. He needs to be that kind of top notch defensive prospect where, he's seeing the rotations, he's making those consistently. And I don't see the degree of defense yet that would make me confident in projecting him along with some of these other bigs at the top.
So, yeah, I mean, it's also worth saying, like, he's averaging, 10 rebounds a game and something like, I want to say, 9 to 10 points a game and blocking 3 or 4 shots a game. Has, a 17% block rate. I'm not saying, and I don't think you're saying that Mohamed Bamba is bad. He is still, for me, very clearly a top 10 level talent in this draft. He is incredibly gifted in ways that other prospects can't even begin to dream of due to his length, due to his fluidity at 6'11" with a 7'9" wingspan, due to the timing that he has on his ability to block shots, and just due to the fact that, his catch radius and dunk radius is going to be bigger than just about everyone else's due to that size. So where it comes in for me is how much of this is he's just not strong enough to do this stuff yet, or how much of it is he is just not doing it because he doesn't want to do it. And I don't have an answer to that yet. It's very early in the season. He's played, I think, 5 or 6 games. I know he missed a little bit of time with a concussion that he suffered against Northwestern State, or maybe in practice right after that game, and missed the New Hampshire game. But it's hard for me to just decide, okay, I'm taking this question mark over Collin Sexton, who I feel pretty good about being just a crazy dude, but also a guy who's going to get me buckets. Right now, I feel confident that Collin Sexton can be a lead ball handler in the NBA. Jaren Jackson, I feel confident he can play a role in the NBA as a smart defensive 5 who can move his feet on the perimeter, protect the rim a little bit, and who can also knock down shots from the perimeter, even though he has that push shot. He's a better shooter than Mohamed Bamba right now. How much do you trust the body with Bamba to fill out is the big question for me. Guys like him, guys like Rudy Gobert, guys who have these really long limbs, it takes them longer to fill out than other guys because, just naturally they elongate at such an early age that, there's just not enough time for muscle mass to build up, right? I can't really tell you yet how that's going to go, though. I can't tell you he's going to become just this incredible, floor spacing due to gravity that he provides on screen and dives, incredible position holding, rim protecting 5. But the upside's there for it. And just because he's not doing that right now doesn't mean he's not going to do it in the future. So I don't know what to do with him yet, but right now he's been a bit underwhelming. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, he's all about ceiling outcome for me. I mean, like you talked about, the defensive ceiling is huge. I mean, his margin for error on defense is probably one of the biggest we've ever seen, considering his mobility and his length. He can play several feet off of guys on the perimeter. He can make mistakes, and he can still erase all of those things. You don't see that from prospects very often. He has a huge margin for error at that end. But his ceiling outcome is almost entirely tied to how much strength he adds. If he can anchor down low on the glass, if he can be that kind of 5 force that you see from traditional centers. If he doesn't get to that, it's harder for him to fill a role in the NBA, just because if you're a slider center and you're not overly skilled, it's just tough unless he shoots the ball. Then you can probably get away with it. But then still, you look at a guy like Thon Maker, who is, a bit narrow, in the lower body, and it's tough for him to rebound. So there's a lot of things that I can't personally answer. I have the expertise to answer about body development and all of that. If he doesn't add it, it's going to be tough for him. But I have him still clumped in with the rest of the elite bigs just because the ceiling outcome is so high. I do think that his rim protection, he has the highest ceiling in the class for that. He has enough instincts, and he obviously has length and mobility, arguably that combination that we have not seen in the past decade from that position. So if he does these things, he's going to be a successful prospect. And if he works hard, I think that's another thing is, does he put the work in? Does he put the time in? He's going to have to develop his body. He's going to have to develop his game. If he does all those things, I think he can be the best big in this class. He still has that kind of upside to me. But right now, his current production doesn't, scream putting him up with some of the other guys like Ayton.
Yeah, and look, it's worth pointing out that he is known throughout the basketball industry as like an incredibly smart kid. He is, a very high level, very high level thinker as well. Like, he might just be kind of overthinking things right now. He might just kind of be acutely aware of the absurdity of college basketball and making this kid who should probably be developing while getting paid somewhere, making him go to college basketball is silly. And, it is going to come down to effort, like you said. I think that he needs to show NBA teams in the pre-draft process that he's going to put the work in to get up to like 250, 255 pounds that, I'm not 100% sure that his frame can hold, but at 6'11" with a 7'9" wingspan, you would think that his frame and like relatively broad shoulders, like he's not skinny by any stretch of the imagination. Like you would think that he's going to be able to add 25 pounds over the course of his career, especially in his lower half. If he can, prove to NBA teams that he wants to add that muscle and add that, strength and really explosiveness. Because, if he's going to be adding muscle mass, he's going to be adding explosiveness. Like, he needs to prove to NBA teams that he's willing to put in that work. That's where the pre-draft process is going to be incredibly important for him. He needs to interview well, regardless of the way that this season goes, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Okay, so what point guard do you want to talk about first? Do we want to talk about the guy that I just mentioned, Collin Sexton, or do you want to talk about Trae Young?
Let's do Sexton just because it was so bizarre.
I have never seen that before.
No.
So Collin Sexton, for people who don't know or people who are NBA fans, the Alabama-Minnesota game on, I believe it was Saturday, Collin Sexton and Nate Mason start jawing. I think that, if I remember correctly, Nate Mason kind of crossed up Collin Sexton. He didn't really fall. He just kind of stumbled a little bit. And, they start talking. And as things do with Collin Sexton, it escalated. And those two guys get technical fouls. And Richard Pitino, Minnesota's coach, said something, and he also got a technical foul. While Alabama is shooting free throws, a fight breaks out. And Alabama's entire bench leaves the bench. So they all get ejected from the game. I believe that a minute after that, Dazon Ingram, their other starting guard, fouls out. And then John Petty, their other elite freshman, rolls an ankle and just like kind of sprains his ankle, it looks like. That means Alabama, for about a 10-minute stretch, had to play this game 3-on-5. They were down, I want to say like 14 whenever this happened. And the game ended up being a 5-point win for Minnesota because Collin Sexton decided, I'm going to put the entire team on my back and drop 19 points while playing 3-on-5 over the course of 10 minutes. And like Minnesota was full on, like, at differing points, kind of triple teaming him. And it just didn't matter. He's just insane when it comes to this stuff. He's the most competitive human I think has ever existed in the pre-draft process.
I mean, if you were to script something like this ever happening, nobody ever would because it's so unpredictable. You would predict that Collin Sexton would somehow be involved with both stages, both, the fight breaking out and then just going 1-on-3, running away from triple-double teams. It was insane. Like the pull-up shots over contests. He was still getting to the rim against like three guys. It was incredible. Like double clutching for like left-handed layups. He's awesome. I mean, he's one of my favorite personal prospects I've ever gotten to watch. His character, all of that stuff. I still have gripes about some areas of his game that we can get into a little bit, but just this is a guy that we've talked about in the past. You just bank on the character. You bank on him developing his game enough because he's such a competitive son of a bitch. He's going to do it. So, I mean, there's just not a lot to not like about Collin Sexton.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think teams are going to have some questions about how far the character goes. You know what I mean? Like, how much does this, desire to just jaw jack constantly kind of go to off the floor, and how much of Are there going to be issues that pop up there throughout the course of essentially what is a 9-year investment from an NBA team drafting in the top 10 in what they hope will be a 9-year investment at least. So like, I don't necessarily know that I'm going to full on say that, I fully trust him yet, but in terms of the on the floor stuff, I think I would take Collin Sexton over Mohamed Bamba just because I trust that dude to go out and get me buckets immediately. Like his numbers right now are the silliest thing that I can even imagine a freshman point guard having in his first, what is it? He's played 5 games so far, something like that. He is averaging 25.2 points, 4.4 assists. His advanced numbers, 64.8 true shooting percentage. Again, he is by far their best option, really their only option at times, and played 10 minutes of a 151-minute sample, 3-on-5, getting guarded by 3 dudes. His assist rate is 30.2. His turnover rate is 8.5, and I don't think I've ever seen a turnover rate for a point guard that low. He is just so incredible to me, watching him on the floor. He is by far my favorite college basketball player to watch this year. He is the person most worth the price of admission right now in the entire country, and I suggest all of you go see him immediately.
Yeah, I'll double down on that. He's my favorite guy to watch, dude. Again, just for his demeanor, he's just so damn fun. And he was really engaging and stuff at the Hoop Summit. He's just a guy that I really enjoyed kind of following along with. His teams in Hoop Summit practices would win every single pretty much shell drill or anything just because he's so hyper competitive. He's always taking control of the ball. I'm not totally sold on the shot yet. I know his efficiency and everything has been fantastic stats wise. He's a difficult shot maker for sure. Something about his mechanics, a bit rigid, a little bit, especially in the lower body. I mean, not bad. I think they're completely workable. This is why I had him way ahead of Duval, because I feel much better about his mechanics. Just not totally fluid. I'm not sure if he's been the same kind of dynamic athlete that I remember him being. Just as far as shiftiness, he's getting better. I think his last game he was starting to look like that kind of player again with just his handle, his burst. He's really physical and he uses his body well. He's pretty strong. He's a lot stronger than I think he gets credit for. So that element of his game is good. I don't know if he's a dynamic off 1 foot leaper as far as finishing in traffic. I don't think that's his game either. Yeah. But he's just a guy that he's strong character. If he has the work ethic to back up his character, he's going to develop certain elements of his game. And I think that's what you have to bank on. So
the big question for me is the finishing right now, I would say. Very, very skinny. Not a wild leaper. I would say that's probably fair. He's probably an average level athlete, would you say, right?
Yes. And
the change of direction, I think, is a little bit of a concern. He's really, really, really good at change of pace, though. He has that hang dribble that he uses, and very, very few people know how to stop that yet. At least in the college game, and especially in the high school game. He gets space whenever he wants to get space. And as long as that continues to happen at the NBA level, and I don't that's the kind of he has the kind of moves that make me think he's going to be able to get separation in the NBA. They're just so mature at this stage, and the first step is so quick that I think he's going to be okay getting separation.
I think that's fair. I think he might need the threat of a shot, though. That's what's going to come down to is how dynamic of a pull-up shooter. If he has the threat of a shot, I'm totally with you. I have no reservations about him creating space if people think that he can shoot the ball off the bounce, because he's going to be able to use the hang dribbles, the hesitation moves to freeze guys. If he can do that, he can be a plus offensive lead guard at the next level. Yeah,
I think that I agree with that. So let's go on ahead and move on to Trae Young, because Trae Young. Would you call Trae Young a top 30 prospect in college basketball yet?
I would, yes.
Yeah, I think I'm there too. I think that I would have him within my first round at this stage. What do you like so much about Trae Young?
Well, I mean, he just puts together almost the full package for what we want for a lead guard. You start from the top, deep range on his pull-up. We knew that coming in, but really, he's just gotten to it so fluidly. He can really transition from his handle to his pull-up like few guards I've seen can. I'm not comparing him to Stephen Curry or Damian Lillard types, but he just kind of gives off that vibe, just transitioning from his pull-up, from his handle to his pull-up. So it starts there. The handle, just really, really great handle. I mean, he's so shifty. He's more of an agile athlete than like a raw burst guy. I think you saw against Oregon, against better athletes, the burst didn't stand out as much as it did before. He's not a super fast guy. I mean, he's pretty fast, but he's more just shifty. So he can really, cross over in tight spaces. He can navigate his way through the lane, and then the passing craft. Passing on the move, keeping his head up on driving kicks, being able to pass with either hand. There's just a lot to his game, skill-wise, that I like that compensates for, of course, the lack of ideal positional size, frame, all of that. He doesn't have long arms. It's just I think he might be skilled enough to win at the next level just via the threat of his pull-up opening up like a pretty underrated skill game.
Would you have him higher or lower than Trevon Duval right now?
Higher.
Yeah, I think I'm there too, and I was someone who was a little bit higher on Trevon than you were. So what there is to like about Trae Young right now, one thing that I talk about pretty regularly with guys who are going to play the point guard position is the way they pick up the ball off the dribble to go up for a jump shot, right? Trae Young's ball pickup is unbelievable. He is so good at getting it clean, bringing it up, and shooting in a very fluid, I mean, like I almost said logical, but like a very fluid, coherent jump shot with perfect fluidity and perfect footwork that it's really, really difficult for me to see how that skill doesn't translate. Now, I will say he still has not faced a ton of size yet. Like he still has not like gone up against hyper long defenders who are going to cause him issues. And I would say that the one game that he did against Arkansas has been, in my opinion, probably his worst game of the year. Would you agree?
That's fair. Like
Jalen Barford, Daryl Macon, like those guys are at least athletic. I don't know how long they are necessarily. They look like they have relative length though. And they look like they can cause issues for the opposition, basically. And they do cause issues for the opposition. And I would say that was his worst game. His best game against Oregon came against a lot of Peyton Pritchard, like a lot of guys, like Elijah Brown was on him for a decent amount of time. Like just guys who aren't going to be like hyper elite defenders. Does any of that scare you whenever you start to try and figure out like, okay, Trae Young, we need to see him against longer defenders who can at least get in his grill and make him like try and find different angles passing the ball, and who can kind of give him problems with that lower release point that he has.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it definitely, you have to think about it. You have to factor into the analysis. You have the low release point, and he shoots kind of out and not up, so he's not getting like a great amount of, and he's got a low set shot too, so he doesn't get a lot of elevation on it. It's tough, but he has the depth on his shot to make up for that, I think. If you put him in NBA space and you have a guy who can literally pull up and shoot 30-footers like you showed against Oregon, that's tough. It's just going to open up his game if he can shoot that depth. That's like the Lonzo argument for how he could get his shot off. It's the farther back you shoot, the more room you're going to have. So I'm not super concerned, but it would be nice to see him in a bigger sample go against better athletes, longer athletes, just to see if he can shake these guys. Because again, I didn't see the burst that I saw in the first couple games of the season from him. It just wasn't as noticeable on the court. I came away just completely blown away the first couple of games. I was like, this guy is dynamic speed. He can really get in and out of his moves explosively or relatively explosively. And against Oregon, I was like, he's struggling to beat some of these switches even. He's still producing, which makes this a net positive in my opinion, because I mean that's what you wanted to see against better competition. Can he still put up numbers? The guy puts up 40 points. Like he can get to his spots with his handle. So that's how he's going to have to win. He's going to have to be a craft guy, change of speeds, which he's really natural at. And like you noted, the ball pickup, which was a better way of saying what I was trying to say. Like that's a nice combination to have. I think offensively he has a lot of skills. Of course, we can talk about the lack of explosion off one around the rim. He's going to have to win with craft there, too, because he's not dynamic. He doesn't have the frame to really absorb contact in high degree of fashion. It's hard to see him becoming, unless he's in like a true spread pick and roll, like a dynamic three-level scorer. But even if he's a backup point guard, isn't this kind of like the Juwan Evans argument from last year? They're not the same player, but just a guy that can come in, run your offense for 15, 16 minutes a game and generate both his own offense and create for others?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I had Juwan Evans at like 17, 18 on my board last year. Similar deal. The key with Trae Young, though, is that Trae can shoot off the bounce. Like,
exactly.
Juwan, there was a little bit of a concern there. Can he shoot off the bounce? And from what I've seen from Evans in LA so far, he's actually been pretty good. in the limited minutes that he's played. So I still have faith in him. I'm getting there on Trae Young. Like I would say, like I have him, in the high 20s, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, or like the 21, 22, 23 range. Like not like lottery pick right now, but like I'm cautiously optimistic on the shiftiness. I'm pretty optimistic on him shooting off the dribble, and I am very optimistic on the passing ability and the ability to create looks for others. The two skills that you mentioned, though, or at least the one skill that you mentioned that I want to bring up is the shooting around the basket. He's already shooting 41% around the basket right now, despite this hot start. That's in the 22nd percentile among all college basketball players, according to Synergy. I'm very hesitant on that part of his game. He does have some runners, kind of like Juwan Evans had the ability to make floaters, make runners, everything like that. That'll be a key part of his game, but you can only be so efficient at that. And he's probably going to need to make those shots at least a 50% level, I would say, to be an efficient basketball player. Just kind of given his limitations. But yeah, I think he's probably a top 30 player in the country right now. And that's saying a lot given the fact that he's a freshman and, given how good this class looks. But again, though, point guards, do you think that the standard has risen for point guards, or do you think it's fallen for point guards? Because I struggle with this all the time, just because I don't think there are a ton of good backup point guards in the NBA, but obviously there is an exceedingly high number of elite point guards in the NBA. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's exactly the way to phrase it. I mean, the standard for the elites is risen. Like, if you're going to be an elite guy, you got to be an elite guy. But for some of the backups, I think there's a lot of like mediocre to minus backups in the league right now. I don't see why a guy like Trae Young, who can get his own offense if the shot translates, and he can pass. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's probably going to get better spacing in the NBA. I think a lot of his passes that have been turnovers this year aren't bad reads. They're just like the passing angles aren't very good. So the length is kind of inhibiting those reads. Maybe he gets, more of a two-man game, and he can make those wraparound passes and stuff. So I struggle to think about how this guy, if he profiles and projects as we think, wouldn't be at least, an average to above average backup point guard in the league, just because I don't think there are that many of them.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at too. Where do you want to go next? Should we just kind of finish out PK80 and kind of talk about some other guys that we saw there?
Sure, let's do it.
So Wendell Carter is a guy that's concerning me more and more as I see him. Duke played a decent amount of man against Florida, for instance, just because Florida kind of shot them out of that zone. Wendell Carter really struggled kind of moving in space in that game. That was by far his least effective game of the season, I thought. Like Marquise Bolden pretty, I don't want to say severely, but like pretty clearly outplayed him, I thought, in that game. Does that kind of stuff concern you? I know that you're probably a little bit higher on Carter than I am.
Yeah, I went back and watched it again just because I want to get a better idea. The first time around, I totally agree with you. I think I was like, he's been a disaster in this game. I mean, overall, he was in foul trouble. He did not have a good game.
Yeah.
But I went back and watched, and it was mostly on closeouts that he was really struggling. We saw that too against Texas. He was just getting absolutely murdered on closeouts. That north-south change of direction, especially playing like the weak side of the zone, he would try to close out to shooters and just get blown by. And that was something I didn't notice as much early in the season. I think he actually contained Josh Langford in one of the only perimeter defensive possessions he had against Michigan State. And I was like, yeah, he looked like kind of like I've seen him in the past. I am getting more concerned. I'm not sure if I'm at the level you are yet. I still think in pick and roll, his issue isn't really with that mobility as much as it is when guys get to the rim, they can just elevate over the top of him. We see that with Allen and Hudson, those guys. I mean, he stuck relatively close to them, and he was in position to challenge the shot. He just doesn't have that kind of reach and the bounce. So that's the biggest issue for me is the rim protection issues are there. He's mobile enough moving backwards. He's a bit clunky in that initial step, but I think overall he'll be okay there. The technique is not worked out. You saw a couple arm bars. He presses up too much on the perimeter sometimes, and he'll get called for fouls. He should not be playing that far up. He's not that agile. So to answer your question more succinctly, I think I'm a little bit more concerned, but I'm not at the level yet where I'm like, this guy can't defend in space. That's not what he seems like to me.
All right. Let's just kind of finish out Duke here. Trevon Duval. I don't think we need to talk about Grayson. Grayson is what he is. But Trevon Duval, I think, is continuing to show a lot of the things that worried us about him coming into the year.
Yeah, it's funny because I thought he had a couple really awesome dribble moves in that Florida game, and then they would just transition right into like a ridiculous read that he made. He would just pass it into like three guys. He just made a couple boneheaded decisions, and that's what he wasn't doing in the beginning of the season. I think he started like 18 assists to like 2 turnovers this year, and now it just seems to be the bad decision making is starting to add up.
Yeah, he was at 30 assists to 4 turnovers through the Michigan State game.
Good Lord.
Yeah. At the PK80, he was at 14 assists to 13 turnovers. If he's not going to be a shooter at all, that's a significant concern. He needs to be something of a shooter to offset the terrible turnover stuff that he does occasionally, or he needs to get rid of the turnover stuff from his game entirely. I'm starting to become more and more skeptical of him. Again, a guy that I certainly have in the top 30 right now. I don't even know if you would agree with that. Do you?
I think I would. I would have him, late 20s for now.
Yeah, like there are guys who are rising above him, though, for me, and that's a little bit of a worry. Let's go on ahead and move on to Florida. Jalen Hudson is a guy that I've always talked about, like on the periphery, like even during his 2 years at Virginia Tech, is a guy that I thought had a shot. Like he had a lot of ability to create shots. He's a really fluid athlete, pretty explosive, 6'5", had a good frame, had the semblance of shot making ability, but didn't have the consistency. Oh boy, does he have the consistency now. He is really good.
Yeah, he's got a green light. I mean, that's the thing that stuck out for me. I've never seen him before, so this was the first exposure I've had to him. Great elevation on his shot, mechanically sound, Can shoot off balance and on movement. Like he can play off hang dribbles. Seemed like he had decent burst, but the shot making, man. I mean, just the elevation for a guy that size, it just makes his shot really hard to block. He was getting it off in different circumstances. He looked like he had some shot diversity. I was pretty impressed.
So, yeah, I want to kind of give you a couple of quick numbers. So, through his first 2 years at Virginia Tech, Jalen Hudson, and this is over the course of like 60 games, had 16 points as a shooter off of the dribble. Or no, he had 19 points as a jump shooter off the dribble. Through his first 6 games at Florida, he has 19 points shooting off the dribble already. He is at the 84th percentile in that ability. He's also a really good catch and shoot guy, which is something he started to show in the second year of Virginia Tech before he decided to transfer, because I guess that, I mean, like, I don't know for sure, but I think I remember reading that like there was a little bit of friction there with him and Buzz Williams, just because he can be a little bit of a, he can get a little wild, I would say, in terms of the way that he creates offense from time to time. Having said that, I love the fact that he can attack closeouts. I love the fact that, he can knock down shots now. He gets the great elevation. I think he might work his way into being a first round pick. Like, I think we need to see more very clearly, but it would not surprise me if we're sitting here at the end of the year and we're like, yeah, Jalen Hudson, this is kind of a weak year for wings, kind of a weak year for guards. I kind of think this guy's like a top 20 pick.
What kind of handle does he have overall? I know he got picked in that last possession by Trent.
Yeah.
Is he shifty at all, or is it basically like you're looking at catch and shoot, attack closeouts, maybe shoot off motion, and obviously he can shoot off the dribble? Yeah,
I thought he was a little bit shiftier at Virginia Tech than what he's shown so far. He does have a really good first step as well, and I think that's, if he can knock down shots like that, he really just only needs to have the quick first step, because he just needs to be able to attack closeouts and get into the mid-range to shoot. But yeah, so far, I remember a little bit more shiftiness at Virginia Tech that he hasn't shown so far yet this year. But, if that skill was there at Virginia Tech, I would think that it's not going to go away at Florida,
Yeah, and he can change ends of the floor. I was really impressed with him athletically, just mobility-wise, changing ends. Explosiveness off one didn't seem tremendous, but he seemed to have a little bit of body control there. And I don't really know what to make with his defense and passing. I haven't seen enough of him yet.
The passing is not really there. I will say that. The defense, we'll see how it goes. I know that early in the year and through the preseason, Mike White was not going to play him at times because his defense just wasn't there in terms of effort. So I don't think it's been that bad from what I've seen so far, but it's not great yet. And I think that those are going to be how he rounds out the rest of his floor game is going to be the key. Three Gonzaga guys I want to talk about very quickly. The first guy will probably be the quickest. Jonathan Williams, 6'9", 230-pound forward. For me, was probably one of the 5 best defensive players in college basketball last season. Now he's averaging about 18 points, 10 rebounds, still shooting a relatively high mark from 3-point range as well. What have you liked about Williams, or what have you seen in Williams that makes you think, maybe this guy could be an NBA player?
Well, it's always been the defense and the intersection with that and potential shooting. I like his mobility, his athleticism there. If he can shoot it all from range, I think that he becomes kind of an interesting prospect. Yeah,
I think that he's pretty clearly a second-round pick, but he's one of those second-round picks that it would not surprise me if he stuck around. I think I had him somewhere in the 40s. In my earliest mock draft, and I think that's basically right around the area I'll be happiest with him. Killian Tilly is just a guy that I look at and think, oh yeah, that guy's going to play in the NBA for like 8 years because he knows exactly what he's doing every single time he steps on the floor.
Yeah, we talked about him in the preseason preview, and you were right. I think your assessment on him was it was better than mine. I had only seen a little bit of his tape before, and he's definitely a high IQ guy. He was in foul trouble a lot of the game that I watched, but you could see the instincts. He had a really nice closeout at the end of that game. Showed some good mobility. The shooting form is there. He can pass a little bit. I think he's the kind of guy that NBA teams are going to gravitate towards.
Finally, Rui Hachimura. I don't think had seen a lot of Rui, correct?
I had seen none of him, actually. I was pleasantly surprised.
So, yeah, he's 6'8", has like a 7'1", 7'2" wingspan. He's like 235 pounds now. Like, I've done a lot of homework on Rui. I will say that, and it's for a thing that I'm writing at some point here as soon as I get a chance to breathe, basically. In terms of the fluidity athletically in the open court, he's unbelievable. Really high level, I think, in terms of defensive ceiling, just because he can move at a high level, he can block shots, he can do a lot of different stuff. Still figuring it out. Still definitely figuring it out, though.
He just really stuck out to me from a frame, just like you were noting, fluidity, mobility-wise. He popped. I've never seen him before, and I was like, who the hell is that guy? He had that one closeout attack against Bamba, looked really fluid doing that. His shot looks workable. It's a little flat, but if he can shoot a three, he has the general kind of court presence. I think that he looks like an NBA draft prospect. I mean, physically, it's there. I don't know about IQ. I haven't seen enough of him to assess any of that, but just physically and just general movement skills wise, I'm really intrigued.
Well, like he came over last year and like didn't understand any English. Like they would like yell at him in practice and he would have no idea what they were saying. He is now like understanding probably like 80% of what they're saying now, which is really good. And I think that as he continues to grow and mature, he's going to be fine. I reported early in the year that it's going to be more of like a 3-year process instead of a 2-year process probably with Rui, just because, Gonzaga does things, I don't want to say slowly is like in a bad way at all, but they really take their time with a lot of these European guys. They really put them in a position to succeed in a very positive way. And with Rui, the barriers of success for a kid coming over from Japan with no language experience at all were incredible. Just so ridiculously high. So I think that they're probably going to be on more of like a 3-year plan. He's probably more of a 2019 kid than a 2018 kid. But if he blows up, he blows up. And, it wouldn't surprise me if he does.
He's definitely going to be somebody that I'm going to track for sure.
How much Ohio State did you watch in this tournament? Any?
No.
Okay. I want to point out Keita Bates-Diop, 6'7", 7'2" wingspan, shooting 44% from 3, can really just kind of create offense at his size. Effort has always been a question with him, I would say. When he's engaged, he's a really, really useful defensive player. I am tracking him. I think he's probably a top 50 guy for me right now. He's just kind of exactly what NBA teams are looking for at this stage. Trying to think, Mikal Bridges was not at PK80. He was at the Battle for Atlantis. Bridges has been awesome to start this year. He's been doing essentially what he did for the first 2 years, playing a role, being awesome defensively, knocking down shots when he gets the opportunity. He's just getting a lot more opportunities and basically making them at the same clip.
Yeah, and he just seems to have more confidence as a shooter. Maybe that's just having more attempts. There's no hesitation with him now. When he gets the ball, he's going to shoot. Like, there's no like deer in the headlights. And I know he's not expanded his role really, but he's shown a little bit of flashes as far as, shooting a little bit off movement. It's not like sprinting off screens and shooting, but relocations. Like, they had a baseline out of bounds play in one of their games, and he relocated to the corner, shot a little bit on the move. If he can do that at all, like, yeah, he's legit. I mean, the finishing touch, we talked about that before, in straight lines. Like, he can finish with either hand. He's always been a good finisher. Might be able to score in the post a little bit in a pinch, probably not, but he's shown a little bit of that at this level, at least just with his athleticism and his physical tools. Just don't ask him to create anything in pick and roll or off the dribble, and he'll be fine.
He's done that a little bit this year, though. Like, not enough to like say that, oh yeah, it's a skill that he can develop down the road, but like, he's done it just a touch more than what I think I anticipated this year, and he's been okay at it. Like, he's not, like, I still think he's like 1 for 4 this year shooting off the dribble, but the footwork's coming. Like, he's still just long-limbed that everything looks so goofy every time he does it, that I think it's really hard for him to kind of get everything underneath him when he's shooting off the bounce, but like, it's coming. I think it's getting closer and closer.
Well, if that's the case, that's pretty incredible. I haven't watched enough of him to say that yet, but that's really promising. Of course, the defense is where he's going to derive a lot of his value. Kind of not the same extent as Bamba as far as margin for error with his length, but he has such a margin for error. Like, if he messes up any kind of like coverage, he has that ability to recover and just engulf with his length. The quick feet
swats the shit out of dudes sometimes. Like,
it's unreal. Like, he'll mess up and it doesn't matter because he'll just recover and just take the ball from someone. It's pretty incredible. So, I mean, what does he have? Like a 7'1.5" wingspan officially now, or something like that?
Yeah, it's right around there. It's like between 7'1" and 7'2". He's 6'7". Like, he is a just freak in general. Like, he is so good defensively that it's crazy. Like, there was one play where Northern Iowa was like inbounding the basketball, and they tried to like just kind of lob it over him, and he was just like, nope, I'm gonna snatch it even though I'm guarding the baseline right now, and it doesn't matter. There's nothing you can do about it. Yeah, he is so fun to me.
Yeah, honestly, my only knock on him as a prospect is just the girth aspect. He doesn't have that, he's not Robert Covington, and that's not like a huge problem, but it's like, I don't know how effective he's going to be at guarding these like power threes, like LeBron, those types. I mean, nobody can really guard them anyway, but just that would be my only knock, is that he's more of a lighter guy. But if you're the Sixers, man, you got to have him like in your top 10, right? On your big board. Like, that's exactly who they need. Somebody who can like switch between the 1 and the 2, guard smalls, and just space the floor. Like, that's an ideal kind of role player. Yeah,
I agree with you. If I was the Sixers, I would have him in the top 10. I would not be surprised if he ended up going in the top 10 at this stage. He's really good. I'm trying to think. I want to finish with DeAndre Ayton, but is there anyone else that we want to mention before we finish? Because, I'm trying, like, Landry Shamet was okay. He played really, really well against Cal in the first game of Maui, but, whatever, it's Cal. Notre Dame, like, Bonzie Colson was really good, as Bonzie Colson typically is. Temple Gibbs, TJ Gibbs looks pretty good to me as well. Like, looks like a guy that is worth tracking, like 2019, 2020. They ended up winning the Maui Invitational. I mean, like, Jaren Jackson was Jaren Jackson. There's not really a whole lot else to say about him. Is there anyone else that's interesting to you that you want to mention?
You wanted to talk about Justin Jackson really briefly.
I forgot about Justin Jackson. Justin Jackson at Maryland is a guy that a lot of people were excited about coming into the year, and he has been not good early in the year. And that is concerning to me. Really, a lot of it just kind of comes down to the fact that I never I bought him being a fine jump shooter. I never bought him being like a 40% jump shooter like some people did. He's 5 for 23 so far this year. So small sample, but 22% from 3. Still has the same issues finishing inside. He's rebounding more, which is nice, but there's a lot that's kind of cropping up in a way that I think it always probably should have.
Yeah, I watched the Butler game, and he was a complete ghost outside of rebounding. I didn't even notice him on the court. I mean, what I liked about him, of course, was the one-motion shot, and if he's not going to shoot, I don't know how impactful he could possibly be. He's not a good enough playmaker. I don't think his defense is as good as his reputation is. His strength is good. His ability to not foul, for the most part, at least last season, was good, and he uses his length well. But for the most part, I don't see him as an impactful enough athlete to be like a dynamic switch defender or anything like that. And if he's not going to shoot, I don't know what he's really bringing to your team, because you want him in kind of a small ball 4, space the floor, maybe attack a closeout, because I think his handle is pretty workable if he can pass a little bit, which he hasn't really shown the consistency of. So it's disappointing start.
At least he's got an 8% assist rate versus a 27 turnover rate right now.
Oh, geez. Yeah, it's a real rough start for him.
Yeah, it has not been all that great. Trying to think if there's anyone else. Let's just talk about DeAndre Ayton, and if something comes up, something comes up. So this Arizona team has just been a total dumpster fire defensively. Like, let's just throw that out there now. They do not have the personnel right now to be a good defender. There's too much on Alonzo Trier's plate offensively, and he's never really been all that good defensively to begin with. Parker Jackson Cartwright is too small to consistently contain penetration. Trying to think like some of their other guys, like, Alex Barcelo is playing the most minutes of their freshmen outside of DeAndre Ayton. I think he's just not a very good defender yet. Emmanuel Acott probably should be playing high school basketball right now, so he doesn't really know what he's doing yet defensively. This is a bad defensive team. And then on top of it, they're playing DeAndre Ayton with Dusan Ristic a lot of the time, and that's going to always be an issue defensively because they're just not going to have enough mobility defensively to cover up for a lot of the holes. Having said that, DeAndre Ayton has not been very good defensively, I don't think, so far.
I think the interior defensively, you're exactly right. I mean, the stunning lack of rim protection awareness outside of when he's directly underneath the basket or he's trying to contain dribble penetration, then he'll contest, and then he's pretty decent, I think, going vertical. But if it's not in his area and he has to rotate over, he's just not making those rotations. And I get that the situation's not good. It definitely is not good. But there's just certain elements that you should have in your game. If you're standing like 3 feet from a guy who's dribble penetrating and you're just standing there in no man's land, kind of frozen, it seems like there's like a force field around him sometimes. I don't understand it. So he's not as physical as he should be defending on the interior, and his awareness isn't great. But I still can't get over just his physical upside. Like, we see it defending on the perimeter where he can really sink down and slide when you give him a tap. Like, when it's clear space, if he's playing at the level of the screen and pick and roll, or it's like a switch, that dude, it's not real looking. He doesn't look like a real human being. He can sit down. He can contain pretty much anybody I've seen so far. If you start getting creative with him and having his man run up to set a screen and then immediately slip, then he'll screw up. And if you get him on the move, sometimes he'll screw up. But for the most part, like, the physical traits in space, I think it's been really good. I think he's been one of the best defensive bigs I've seen in that capacity. It's just, how workable is that when you pair the lack of rim protection awareness? I don't know what to do with him. Yeah,
I mean, like, I think that for me, he's still like in that top tier. Like, I still have him, like, first, second, third, depending on the day that I'm watching him and Michael Porter. Not Michael Porter. Him, Marvin Bagley, and Luka Doncic. Like, any day I could have them 1, 2, 3. He's just been unbelievable offensively. He's incredibly efficient. He's a good enough shooter that you can easily see him developing the ability to knock down threes consistently. Ridiculous rebounder. He looks like he should be in the NBA right now, just dominating people physically. Like, he is 7'1" with a 7'6", 7'7" wingspan, and he's 260 pounds, and he looks 260 pounds. Like, he is huge. When he does rotate, he looks competent, but it's not happening quickly enough. Like, he's not recognizing it and then rotating in as quick a manner as he needs to be an effective defensive player. There are also some times where, and this happened in the Purdue game a decent amount, where, like, he'll just get sealed off and pinned, like, away from the basket and just not be in position to defend the rim as a primary rim protector. I think this is stuff that, like, he's just never been asked to do, and he's probably going to figure it out at some point. But we say that about a lot of guys, and they don't figure it out. So, like, it's a little bit of a concern right now for me.
And that's a dilemma, just to restate my position more clearly. Like, I have a number 3 right now. I don't know if I should move him up or down, but I know that his physical upside is tremendous. If he shows anything as a rim protector, I don't know how he doesn't go in the top 3 just based on his physical talent. The offensive vast array of skills he's shown, the coordination, the fluidity, the touch, everything. I mean, he's the most advanced offensive big in this class to me as far as ceiling. I don't see anybody else really challenging him. I mean, the shot, yeah, it's a little flat. Maybe it's going to take a little bit to work out to NBA range, but just his ability in pick and roll to like flip his hips and, on short rolls, pass a little bit on the move. There's just a lot to work with there as far as skills. I just don't know how much of it is, like you said, has he never been asked to do this stuff before? The rim protection. I don't think it's effort. I mean, his whole thing was motor, and I do think sometimes he doesn't try, but he does try on the perimeter. Like, he will get engaged. He will make the rotations. He will wall guys off. It just seems like he doesn't know what he's doing on the interior. So he's never been taught. Is that like the entire reason behind like this perplexing lack of rotation ability? Because I agree with you. I think the processing is not there. I think it's more of an IQ and an experience thing than it is a strict motor thing.
I just honestly don't know. Like, I would imagine he's never been taught it and never been asked to do this stuff, but I don't know. Like, I can't sit here and tell you for sure.
Yeah. It's tough because I don't think you can really learn high-level instincts. Like, you see a Jaren Jackson, that dude reacts so quickly. Like, he will react to pretty much any kind of rotation and roll. He knows where to be. And that kind of instincts, I don't think you can learn that. But at the same time, does Ayton really have to have that level of sharp instincts? If he just knows when to generally rotate, he's so physically dominant that he can probably make up for a lot of that. And in much the ways the Bamba can.
I feel like he probably can make up for that. I don't know, man. It's a weird deal with DeAndre Ayton, just because he's been so sheltered in a lot of ways, and he's been such an elite prospect from the time he was like basically 15 that you don't know like if he was like maybe like coddled or like developed any sort of entitlement just from being that immediate star at such a young age. Like, this is what makes LeBron the biggest freak of any athlete in professional history, right? Like, the fact that he didn't develop any of this and then went on to become like the greatest basketball player of all time. Like, this isn't always going to happen with these crazy prodigies, and I don't think we know yet what's going to happen with DeAndre Ayton. I'm not saying he is. I'm not saying he isn't. Like, I just don't know is the thing. And I'm just going to be fascinated to watch him because from a physical perspective, like Cole said, like I said, this guy is the clear kind of best player in this class, I think. Like, from a physical perspective, he's the best player in the class.
Yes, 100%. I mean, you can't deny the physical traits, the movement skills, the skill level that is embodied in someone that big. He's just so ridiculously big and fluid. You just rarely see guys this coordinated at that size. I mean, if teams could find out what makes this guy tick and could really understand his psyche, this is the biggest move guy in the class for me personally. Like, the most high variance. He could be the best set. He's probably not going to be better than Embiid. He's not going to be better than Embiid, but he could be the second best center in the NBA, or he could be kind of a bust. I mean, I don't see how he's not an NBA player because you see a guy like Andre Drummond again. Ayton's more skilled than that guy. Doesn't have quite the physically dominant frame, but he's more skilled at the same age. He can do more. Drummond wasn't a high-effort guy at UConn. I mean, that's his biggest knock. That's why he fell to number 9. You rarely see specimens like that fall. So I don't understand. I don't know how he fails entirely, but there is a lot of variance here.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Cole, that's going to be where we end it. We're actually going to go for an hour this week. It's crazy. Tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people if you have anything exciting that you want to let them know about.
Well, we're going for an hour because we're both like physically dead from all this college. So it'd be nice to regroup over the next couple days.
It's not even just college for me. So like we hosted our first Thanksgiving and like it was just crazy throughout the entire day. And then, one of the people that we invited, we probably had I think we had 10 people at Thanksgiving. And Laura invites one of her friends and she brings her boyfriend. And the boyfriend decides, hey, I'm going to tell the girlfriend that I cheated on her midway through Thanksgiving. So we eventually had to get this dude up out the paint of our apartment. And he then returned at 3 a.m. saying that he couldn't find his phone and stuff after he had apparently texted Laura's friend saying oh yeah, sorry and all this stuff. So crazy Thanksgiving for me. And I really haven't 100% recovered and slept just because there was all this madness happening around me,
Now I really hope that everybody stayed to the end of this podcast. You get rewarded with that. That's pretty incredible. But as usual, check out the Step-In. We have new pieces on there pretty much every day. So right now, Ben Rubin just had a piece reacting to the first couple weeks of college basketball. So check that out. And just continue to tune in here because I'll be on here every week.
Thank you all for listening. This has been the Game Theory Podcast. Please subscribe to The Athletic. I'm going to have a lot of different stuff throughout the week. I am going to write... Well, for today, I did Film Room on some breakout guys. Started the Luke May National Player of the Year campaign, even though he was terrible last night against Michigan State. I love Luke May. Jalen Hudson, Mikal Bridges, Svi, some other guys I wrote about, kind of breaking down if what they're doing right now is sustainable or if it's going to kind of fall off a little bit. I'm going to have a Big Ten thing. I'm going to have a Pac-12 thing. I'm going to probably try and write about Trae Young later in the week. And, just kind of keep it there. It's going to be a really fun time over at The Athletic. We have a lot of really great articles coming out every day. Trying to think what else. CLNS Media has been terrific to me, so thank you to them as always. But, yeah, I think that's about all I got for you. So until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.